we're live, happy and succeeding in the future of work. And today we have Ariela. I did it right, right?
You got it right. Hello.
From Real. And what better way to have a guest on Mental Health March or May? We're in May, right? I don't know. I've lost track because it's like rainy and gray. It seems like September here in New York and New Jersey. But for Mental Health Awareness Month, Ariela is the person to speak with. And maybe you could tell the reason why, because you started up, founded, basically, how would you call it? Therapy, mental health awareness?
A new form of mental health care, really. Real is building a new therapy model, and really what we're bringing to life is a way to make mental wellness an essential part of well-being, to make mental wellness a part of our everyday. So, not only working on mental health care, but thinking beyond one-on-one therapy and instead building a new relationship with mental health where folks have access to this digital membership model and get to engage with mental health care every day.
And what made you start to do that? Like, there's so many different choices to build a startup. What made you go in this direction?
Yeah, well, I've worked in mental health care for 8-9 years now, and I became very passionate about it when I was an undergrad at Stanford, when a friend had attempted to take her life. And that was really my big eye-opener as to what mental health care looks like. And I was emotionally distraught, pretty horrified by the system, and didn't think it made sense, right? It was the first time I'd ever seen therapy, first time I'd ever seen a rehab, all through the perspective of my friend. But perhaps that allowed me to be a little more critical or thoughtful about, like, do I think this thing works? And I didn't. I thought I had no reason to believe it would work. So I threw myself at it and haven't stopped working on it since.
Yeah, how's your friend doing? What should I ask?
Yeah, transparently pretty poorly. I think the system failed her.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things where it's your mission to make it better for people like her that don't have to kind of suffer through this without the proper attention. And so how does it work? So let's say if somebody needs help, and I can imagine there's a lot of people, this is kind of a weird way to talk about it, but we have to be, open, no pun intended, real about it. You have 2 long years of a pandemic where people are miserable, depressed, anxious, stressed, fearful. Get out of it. Seems like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And now we're looking at inflation, World War III, prices going up. Now there's a lot of layoffs going on, hiring freezes, recession, stagflation. So I imagine there's a lot of people who are coming to you and saying, hey, help me. Are you seeing that? And what are people saying? Like, what are the help that they need?
I mean, first and foremost, it's like we are social creatures and social animals, and the past 2 years stripped us of that, right? So like connection, we just completely lost for 2 years. And I'm consistently hearing that, not just through Real, but through like my own social life and family life, that people feel a loss of identity, a confusion of identity when they didn't have any form. Like, we are a byproduct of our community, and most people didn't have that community for the past 2 years. And now there's just this indefinite question of like, what is my life going to look like when costs have risen, layoffs are happening? And so pretty consistently I'm seeing fear, panic, this sensation of being lost. And there's a lot of work we have to do to really meet people where they're at right now.
How do you do that? Is it through one-on-one counseling? Is it online counseling, group sessions?
Yeah, so Real is building a new therapy model. And I'll start by saying our goals with that therapy model is to ensure we build something that is scalable and affordable enough to reach every American, something that is clinically effective, and something that meets people before crisis, right? A huge issue in mental health care is it takes an average of 11 years for someone to reach care after symptoms of mental illness, which is obviously a traumatizing experience for someone to undergo. And it's also just clinically a lot harder to treat crisis than it is to prevent it. And so what we're building is this monthly digital membership model, right? Where folks pay less than $25 a month and have access to monthly mental health tracking, and then a suite of on-demand therapy products and programs, then also live group offerings. And so while it might be a reductive example, Reel is pretty comparable to like a Peloton for your mental health, right? Where you can log on any time of the day and there's always going to be programs. You can join a live experience and actually interact with our clinicians with a group, or you can be joining an on-demand experience, which again looks like, if you might go on Peloton and join a Cody class that's on demand, that's sort of what our programs look like. They're called pathways. And we have pathways for things like, there are all these topic-based therapy programs. So we have a pathway on forming a better relationship with your body image. We have a pathway on depression, a pathway on communication and relationships. And so our pathways really scale from like the concerns, experiences, difficulties we experience every day to those more like crisis state uncertainties.
So really it runs, the whole gamut for the need.
Exactly.
And then do people feel more comfortable speaking to a live person, being in a group event, or just kind of being by themselves, listening to some pre-recorded message without having that kind of uncomfortable feeling that other people are around?
Yeah, I mean, it's the on-demand experience. Honestly, what it enables is kind of similar to what enables when you get to do a fitness class in your own time, which is like, when I'm not around people, having to openly, use my identity, my name, my voice, my face with depression, I'm more likely to engage, right? The anonymity component, being able to engage on demand, check in whenever works for you, means one, people are willing to engage with topics they otherwise are not comfortable doing so aloud, myself included. But also two, it means people are able to engage when and where works for them, right? What I like to say is, if you want to go to a therapy appointment, be it a live one-on-one or a live group, both of which I support for different reasons, but if you want to get an appointment, you might get an appointment Monday at 1 p.m., right? And like Monday at 1 p.m., I'm figuring out how to log into this interview, right? I'm not tapping into my childhood traumas, but catch me Friday at midnight and I have shit to talk about, right? And so what we're actually seeing is, for the majority of members, they're engaging late at night and really showing that, like, what are the hours of the day we're most vulnerable? And when are we most vulnerable? It's usually late at night when no one else is around. And our goal at Reel is to really meet people where they're at. How can we reach people when they're at what I call their step zero? When they're not yet ready to say this out loud, how do we meet them at the very beginning? And that's what this on-demand format is allowing for.
So how does that work out, Ariela? So is it something already that's pre-taped, or it's kind of AI driven to have a back and forth?
Yeah, so our pathways, so these 8-session on-demand programs, they are all like built, created ahead of time, and then they're available on demand. So again, it looks just like, if you have a Peloton bike, if you use Obey Fitness, it looks just like those platforms where you can just click in and see, a session that was previously completed or done by, in our case, the clinician. And so you're not live engaging with the clinician in that session. Though if you want to live engage, you can join our group events where you have the chance to engage with those clinicians live.
So let's say what are some of the things that people come to? Is it depression? Is it substance abuse? Is it loneliness? Are there certain themes that you see that's really prevalent?
Well, what's interesting, just to the topic of community and loneliness, one of our most popular pathways is our friendships pathway, right? And the topics that are covered in that friendships pathway include isolation, identity, loneliness. And what we found is, for a large portion of our members, the very thing they were battling with over the past 2 years was friendships, right? And this notion of like, who am I? And I would venture to bet that the pandemic-driven world, the isolation that came with it, really resulted in people feeling a confusion, loss of friendship in ways they never have before. So a surprise for me, certainly, was that our friendships, so many members were working through and battling with friendships. A second one, which is sadly not as surprising, is body image, right? Body dysmorphia, eating disorders, et cetera. And I think that sadly, that's not as surprising. I think there's been a lot of headlines that speak to how much people suffer with that. Anxiety is pretty across the board dealt with, less surprising as well, though upsetting that we still have so many people battling with it. Those are a few examples.
So let's say with, loneliness, and I've seen it firsthand where, you have a circle of friends and colleagues, but then now you're not going to an office and people being careful during the pandemic. And then you start kind of losing, connections, and then you realize, oh my gosh, this is really weird. And so when you kind of have, let's see, this on demand, are they giving advice, like feeding you advice? Or
Yeah.
how does that like work? Will they say, hey, here's
Yeah.
what you should do, here's a to-do list? Or
Great question. So these pathways are
Mhm.
truly like never before seen designed in-house therapy programs. And they bring together like an array of therapeutic concepts from CBT to DBT to psychoeducation. And they walk you through, like, goes from like what is happening in your brain when you experience this, what are ways to name your feelings, what are ways to practice, to identify your triggers, to practice behavior change. So take, for example, how to form a better relationship with your body image pathway. Again, that's an 8-session experience. And these were all built over the course of like a year and a half, right? A whole lot of research and work went into building them. That how to form a better relationship with your body image pathway. You're pushed session 1, and session 1 walks you through, where does our perception of body image come from, right? And the therapist, whose name is Maddie Lucas, will walk you through, like, I want you to think of the first time you heard your parent or guardian comment on their own body, right? What can you remember that happened to you then, right? And I want you to think through the first time you looked in a mirror and question the worth of your own body. When was the first time you wondered, maybe if your like stomach fat or your thighs look different than you wanted? And so we really are guiding you through the therapeutic journey of starting from a root cause, reflecting, where does my relationship with this topic come from? And then how did I respond at that point? And then like through these sessions over sessions, you're walking through, like, how did this recurringly show up in my life? What did that do to me? Where am I today? And then moving forward, how do I practice behavior change to look different, right? How do I change my self-talk the next time I look in front of a mirror, right? How do I change my experience the next time I go to try on clothing? And so it's really like quite a personalized journey from like reflection and analysis to behavior change and practice and evolution go forward over the course of these 8 sessions. And again, like part of what makes Real so innovative and new is that these pathways themselves have never before been built, right? And how they were built at Real is inclusive of a clinical team, a research team, a learning design team, and a production team, right? And so we really built out what is the experience of an 8-week therapeutic journey in ways that hasn't been built before.
And so this is a unique thing. So this is not common out there,
Correct.
in the current thing. This is something that's specific. You've kind of decided, hey, we want to do something different, unique, that we feel is more helpful. And I could kind of understand it, because let's say I would want to go for some help. First, yeah, I'd have to set up that appointment. I'm going to feel kind of a little awkward and, speaking to some, receptionist would have her do it. Then I'm taking off of work, taking time off, like you said, go maybe in the afternoon. Then I'm seeing again, going into the building, seeing the people there. And it's like, I don't know if I want to do that. Because now we've, with everything online and digital, you become more attuned to like, all right, why do I need somebody there when I can kind of get it, in a different format? So this way you can kind of hear you can listen to the pathways and not feel that awkwardness. Yeah. Like that old school, you're lying on a couch and you have like someone looking like Sigmund Freud, asking you questions, and it's really uncomfortable and weird and awkward. So here you're just kind of going through the whole sessions to really get some help.
Yep, exactly. And not just the ability to do it on your own time without someone knowing, but the ability to like repeat and re-practice, right? Something so special or important about working on your mental health is that this isn't a one-time fix, right? Just like with our physical health, we need to routinely practice running or, muscle development in order to be fit physically, we need to do that with mental health too. And so often, like, you might have had a great breakthrough when it comes to your mental health 6 months ago, and it doesn't mean anything to you today, right? It really requires re-practice, especially when you think of like self-talk and a lot of these things that might have been so practiced into us as negative. It takes that same amount of practice to suddenly be positive, right? And so what Reel provides for you, and what I think is so needed for people, is a mechanism that allows you to re-practice, right? Review sessions, rewatch sessions, really enable behavior change and emotional cognitive change in ways that is otherwise so challenging for us to really get.
That makes sense, because it's not like you could go get one session, whether it's Reel or anywhere else, and you're like, oh, all right, everything's done, I'm good. It's reinforcement. It's the same way you shower every day or you brush your teeth every day. It's one of these things that you kind of have to keep doing again and again and again and again. I mean, I guess hopefully with maybe there might be an end in sight where, or maybe not, maybe it's because part of your life to have that kind of support system, that keeps you tethered to, moving forward and staying focused on it. Same way, when you lose weight, you can't just say, okay, now I'm going to go back and eat I'm going to have carbs and cake and all that, and I'll worry about it later. You have to kind of just stick with it if you want to succeed for the long term.
Yep, exactly. You can pitch it better than I can.
So I'm the new spokesperson. So wait, but you already have some great spokespeople, I understand, right?
We do. We are so fortunate to have phenomenal advocates for Reel out there.
Wait, you have who? Megan, I'm going to butcher her name, Rapinoe, the soccer star, right?
Yeah, we have Megan Rapinoe, we have Eric Kendricks, Gwyneth Paltrow.
All right, wait, I got to be, who's Eric? I don't know.
Eric Kendricks is he's in the NFL. He plays for the Vikings.
Okay, cool. And then who was the other one you said?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
That's pretty interesting. So can you give some insights into Gwyneth Paltrow, or no, that's not really cool to do?
What I can share is, I to this day, I live under a rock when it comes to celebrities. Mm-hmm. Though I will to this day stand for the fact that I think Gwyneth Paltrow really enabled, like, Goop has been really onto something, and it's, has its a specific point of view as to how it goes about that something, but Gwyneth was correct in saying there is this form of care or medicine, if you will, that is so hidden and not communicated to the world. And so when someone, even if it's like acupuncture, yoga, massage, like these concepts that are so not socialized, and if anyone wants to learn about it, they have to go down like these deep, dark holes of Yelp. And so how can we actually story tell it and communicate it to a national audience, or ways that I quite admire?
See, I'm not familiar. So that's what I thought. Goop was like makeup or something. So all right. So I'm glad you.
Wellness.
Okay. No. So now I understand it. Yeah. How about this? Where for the group therapy? Mm-hmm. So that's where will you go in person, or that's also online?
All online right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm still figuring it out. I mean, something I'm so curious about is, are people eager for, will people benefit from IRL interactions? It's not clear if we're at that place yet, or if we ever will be. Like, I'm in this post-pandemic world, I'm not sure what people's like IRL versus online engagements look like.
It's interesting because, I'll put myself in that space. I could see benefits of having people around me who are going through the same thing. Because because I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, I started this startup recruiter to help people find jobs and to teach them how to interview and all that kind of stuff. And then we would have these meetups and online meetups, meetups. And what happened, you noticed people felt such relief, because let's say, let's say there's 20 people on this video call, and they look at each other and they say, oh, people look pretty normal. And then they start hearing that they're going through the same thing. Oh, I'm interviewing, I get ghosted. Oh, I'm interviewing, I don't have feedback. No one's calling me. Recruiters are blowing me off. And they feel it's just them. And then when they realize that other people are going through the exact same thing, you could literally, Ariel, see it on their face. They're like, oh,
Relief.
oh, I
Totally.
thought it was just, and they would say it after. It's like, I thought it was just me, Jack. I thought like it was me going through it. And like I speak
Yeah.
to my spouse and friends, and they're like kind of blaming me. And then you look around and you see all these other capable, smart, folks, not that this has to be, but college graduates, MBAs, JDs, and they're going through it. And it's this great relief when you see other people. So yeah, on
I
one part, I
totally
could see
agree.
that value where you look around and you're like, oh, all right, it's not just me. There are other people. And like right away, you just calm down. I imagine, you calm down and feel more comfortable.
Yep, I'm totally aligned. I
Yeah.
mean, we so rarely have what we so need. Again, we're social creatures, is a sense of like, am I a part of it? Like, am I alone? Am I
Yeah.
the only one? And so, what drives insecurity, self-doubt is feeling alone on these very heavy, hard, real topics. And ideally, Real will continue to innovate on our product and offer more and more ways for people to feel a sense of, I'm not alone.
And where do you see it going? Are there other means to help people, like apps
Where do
or
well, there are two different questions here. Where
yeah,
do I see it going?
yeah.
Across the entire country.
Okay.
When I think of Real in 5 years, I think of Real scaling across adults to teens to kids, really building a platform that resonates with the entire country and building a means for us to work on our mental health always. Again, I think that really goal of Real is, how do we move from mental health care being something that 7% of our population engages with for 1 hour a week? How do we move from that into something that 100% of our population engages with every day, right? What is the tool for you to go to when you're suddenly having a panic attack before a hard conversation, right? And what is a tool you go to after you just received really bad news from your doctor and are stressed out? What is a tool that you go to after you were laid off, after you were broken up with, when you're just anxious at 1 o'clock in the morning, right? When I think of Real is a tool that is both there for you in those moments of uncertainty, but also equipping you such that fewer of those moments of crisis even happen in the first place. And we have a whole host, a lot of work to do to get there, not just on the product side, but like we're really inventing a new care model, right? Our very understanding of mental health care wasn't built with this, service in mind. And so a lot of what our clinical team and our research team is innovating on is like, what exactly is the care needed to ensure we prevent crisis? We haven't built preventative care, right? And so Real is really the first to be doing that. And when I look back in 5 years, I can't wait to say that we did it.
And things change so quickly, because if we had this conversation, 4 or 5, just say 4 years ago, and you
Yeah.
mentioned about young, let's say teens, young adults, I might be, I don't know, is that really necessary? Now, studies and surveys show like young kids are having a really rough time. They had a brutal time during the pandemic. They're having a tough time now, and for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. So yeah, it seems like that's a market that needs where they need help. You hear about the opioid, not only addiction, but people just, I think the CDC says something like 100,000 people died from whether fentanyl or other opioids. And a lot of young people who are doing that. So they desperately need the help. It's clearly a big issue.
And we have the issue also in alcoholism, right? We don't
Yeah.
talk about it very much because we socialize
Yeah.
drinking alcohol in ways we don't socialize opioid use, but it's hugely problematic how much people of all ages, particularly young adults, are using and abusing alcohol, right? And we have this poor understanding of like, when is it social and fun? When is it a drug addiction or at least a substance use problem? We so rarely pinpoint that as an issue. And I think that's something that needs to be spoken about. So many people look to alcohol as a coping mechanism when they deserve better care.
I agree with you. One thing, because I have having kids in college, what brings to mind is this, you're paying, 20, 30, 50, 60, 70,000 a year in tuition. And then, your kids are going to be drinking and getting drunk. Now it's okay, maybe a little here and there, but just getting plastered. You're like, wait, this makes zero sense. It's
Yeah.
not like in the 40s or 50s or 1930s, where if you went to college and you graduated, you're set, you have it. Now that's not the case.
Yeah.
So to glamorize and turn a blind eye and say, yeah, start young, drink, and it's so addictive that it's going to last you the rest of life. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense that we kind of pretend that's normal, and it's not normal. And if you say something about it, you say like, what's wrong with you? It's your problem, not everyone else's. So there's just so many areas that need help.
Yep. I mean, you're preaching to the choir.
Well, because it's one of these things that you see these things happening, and you see this more than anybody. But as a Gen Xer growing up, you didn't talk about these issues.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about burnout or mental health issues, or if you did, people think you're weird.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, the conversation is there. It's open. It's encouraged. So many companies I've spoken to, Ariel, that's such a big point that they're because they get it that if you have a burnt out workforce, they're not going to produce. Not only not going to produce, they're probably going to bring everything down because they're not coming and bringing the best version of themselves. And,
totally.
And at least we could talk about it now, and they're concerned about it. I mean, these companies now having chief wellness officers.
I know. I mean, we really need to dramatically. I think what's so hard is that a lot of these really serious mental health issues are being put in the hands of employers. And I can tell you, employers are not equipped and were never designed to be solving for these mental health concerns. Right. And what do I mean by that? I mean, first and foremost, health insurance companies are not covering the mental health needs that employees need. Right. And so employees are looking to employers to figure out, can you cover care / blaming a workplace? And don't get me wrong, a lot of workplaces suck and need help. But I think what's important to name is that employers are being asked to solve for things that I don't think they have the resources to solve. Right. And if you talk to any chief HR officer or chief people officer of the past 2 years, they will tell you these are the 2 hardest years to run people operations of an organization, because CPOs were asked to take on the work of clinicians of a healthcare system, and they don't have the resource to do that. And we're at a really important inflection point where I think healthcare companies need to be more thoughtful, more creative, more innovative when it comes to figuring out, how do I solve this mental health crisis?
Yeah. Have you tried or are doing kind of B2B where you would go to companies and have them offer your services as part of the benefit package?
Yeah, so really this next year, after we closed the Series B earlier this year, and really all of last year was focused on enhancing clinical efficacy of our membership, of our products, such that this next year we really can enhance the number of people who have access to Reel via channels like B2B. So we've gotten a ton of demand from the employer side. Sadly, so many people are looking for mental health care. And ideally this next year, we're really going to scale that across the country.
I think that's a good move, because you're saying, now this is kind of lame. Well, like no Zoom Fridays, but then other companies say, hey, we're closing down for a week, and then another week later on in the year. So you could see there's a change that didn't happen before. So you're starting to see those differences. So they're becoming more aware.
I mean, at Reel, this quarter, we were piloting a 4-day work week, as you know, and really have been very intentional, thoughtful about questioning and answering, how do we build a mentally well workplace? And it's not easy. The workplace wasn't necessarily built to be mentally well in the first place. We've tried.
Wait, are you trying to say that commuting an hour and a half to a building and then having to go, through, let's say, New York City, which is, depending on, it could be a little violent, a little dirty, a little like rough. And then you got to go into, this big sterile building, stay there for like 10 hours a day under fluorescent lights, with the windows that don't open up. Are you trying to say that's not good for your mental health? I find that hard to believe. And then, oh, wait. And then you got to commute home for another hour and a half or so.
I don't know
Is
if
that,
it's mentally, in all fairness, I don't know if working alone in silos in our homes is mentally well
that's
either.
not even great either, right? That's not that.
We're
That's
all
not so
figuring
ideal.
out how to make this better. But yeah, I think the workplace, like, and again, it's because the people building workplaces were not equipped with the resources, tools, training to build mental wellness either. Like, it's going to take a lot of rewriting, rewiring, to build a world that is mentally well. And I think when it comes to Real, we're both building a product that does so for our members, but also trying to be thoughtful and intentional about how to build a mentally well world for our employees.
And I'm so glad, you're saying that, hey, we're trying it out. We're trying to iterate. We're trying to do like A/B testing to see what works, because that's just an honest approach. And I think everyone else should do the same thing. It's like, give you an example. If coming back to the office coalesced around hybrid, but I don't know, is that the right one? Maybe, maybe not, but it's also like, okay, hybrid, that's what we're doing. And it's like,
we have to be, and again, it's
maybe,
hard.
maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's like, okay, now we're going to do it this way. Instead of saying, well, you know what, let's try it. Because I would have more respect for the companies and say, hey, let's try it, because we got to do something. So let's try it. People want to be remote, but we feel like maybe all remote, everybody, maybe that's too dramatic for now, for whatever reason. Okay, let's do 3. Let's see how it is. And if it works, okay. If it doesn't, let's change it. Instead of saying, nope, hybrid, this is it.
I know it takes so, and it's hard. I have to remind myself to keep using the word try, because on one hand, you're sort of trained as an employer or a CEO to act with certainty.
Exactly.
Right? People expect that of you. And good God, the past 2 years taught us none of us can act from certainty. But it's real, it takes humbleness, and it takes just like a real sense of humanity to be like, you know what? I don't know, but I have a hunch this is going to work for these reasons. It still might not. We're going to give it a shot for a quarter. It's hard. It's really hard.
See that I appreciate that so much, because going back to the pandemic too, if the politicians, if Dr. Fauci, we're more like that, saying, hey, I believe this is what we should do. I'm not God. I don't know for sure this is exactly. I think this is true. I'm trying to make the best decisions I can. I'm playing the cards the best way I can. I've been dealt. And I think more people, we wouldn't have all this like everybody attacking each other, because then you would say, oh, that's very reasonable. They're saying, hey, we're trying our best. We've never been through this before. We don't know if it's going to work. We want to make it work for everybody. There's going to be bumps in the road. We're going to make mistakes. Bear with us, and we'll keep trying. And I think the American public, and I can't speak for other countries because, I just know here, I think we would have been more like, okay, and rally together instead of going into different camps, all fighting with each other, making things worse.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's hard. I'm a human. You like want to, people, the thing is, at the same time, people do expect, I would argue, people expect certainty and belief. And that's what people need out of a leader. Of like, at times of uncertainty, at times of loss, I need my leader to be our like guiding force, lead me, like, beat the drum and lead me to certainty. And it's tough, it's like, I can speak openly and share it's challenging to both be a source of certainty in an environment that has zero certainty, like no certainty at all. And I was just talking about mental health for founders last week with a friend who wrote a book about his mental health journey in building a company. And part of what's challenging is you're so encouraged to speak honestly and genuinely about your mental health story. But at the same time, people are not accustomed to hearing that. And so it's easier for many to, I guess from where I sit, if I'm being totally honest about nervousness or uncertainty, I would worry people think, is this company going under? Like the CEO is this nervous. In reality, like, no, we're all this nervous. We just don't say it. Right.
It's so true. Yeah, it can be, and for men, I think it's even worse. You can't, because if you do it, like, you're weak. If a man who's a leader is kind of come across wishy-washy, forget it. It's all over.
Yeah, and if you're a woman and you're too confident, you're going to be canceled.
Yeah,
So
it's
sucks for
bizarre. It's
everyone.
right. It's see, that's a problem too, I think, with these things where we have all these kind of like, this is how it should be. And then you have to follow along, which makes it harder, which creates mental health issues. So there's just a lot of different challenges going on. So like a lot of it's societal, a lot of,
No,
pressure from that. So it's bizarre.
we don't. Yeah, we need to humanize one another more. We need, even when it comes to building a mentally well world, it's part of what's so worrisome is we don't humanize just
Yeah.
people generally, right? And it's the employers, the CEOs, the employees, those who are laid off. Like there are so many moments where we're and we just weren't taught it. Whenever I see like, can you believe this person was X, Y, and Z? I'm like, of course I believe it. When were we taught to be better? What school system, like what role models, movies, or shows growing up taught us to be more vulnerable, to be more intimate, to be more human? Like these characteristics don't grow on trees. They have to be trained and developed into people. Again, behavior change. It takes day after day practice. And for the vast majority of people, myself included, the models we had growing up across, school, media, homes were not models that showcased vulnerability.
Don't laugh at me for bringing this up, but so watching Johnny Depp and Amber Heard in the trial, right? You look at it and say, wait, here are two extremely successful, put aside the trial, right? But turn back the clock. Two super successful people, presumably extremely wealthy. You look at it like, wow, they have everything. And then when you watch the trial, you realize, wow, they're hurting. I mean, they're going through, I don't know what, but there's so many issues there. And then it kind of wakes you up to say, wait, you look at people and think they have it together, they have the life. And then you realize, no, not really. They have it pretty bad. Like I wouldn't want to trade places with them. They seem in a very dark space. And I think that's what happens, like underneath it, like you said, getting nervous. I think we all have that from, different things, but we just kind of try to hide it.
Everyone has a story. Everyone has something they're going through, and regardless of how it compares to what the next person's going through, it means something to them compared to what they've gone through. And we got to be more sensitive to that, more aware of that, more cautious of it. And I hope, I hope Real enables the country to do that better.
That's great. And also, I think I saw somewhere about, you have something with Revlon.
Yes, we just launched our big partnership with Revlon, and really showcasing a campaign around mental wellness being beautiful and acknowledging the complex relationship so many of us have with beauty and our mental health, and doing so across, actually Revlon is one of our first employer partners. And also, we scaled across something like 7,500 CVSs across all, in this co-branded campaign with Revlon.
That's great. Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm so proud.
So this is growing, huh? This is getting big.
It is. Of course it is. Jack, what were you expecting?
No, so when you said outside, so is it across the whole country for the offering? So anybody, anywhere?
Yes.
How about the world too? Is it like other countries
Not
as well?
yet, and that's
Okay.
really by choice. Like if we wanted to legally, we could, but we have personally chosen that we think the care we're delivering today is pretty like culturally driven or impacted by American norms, and would want to be very careful and thoughtful about scaling outside of the country.
So if people wanted to find you and find your company and check it out, how does it work? Would there be is there a free session available, or how does it work, and how can they find the Real?
Folks can go to join-real.com and they can sign up there. And if they wanted access to a month off, I want to say that's available on our website right now, but I'll have to follow up.
So they could check it out, and then they could sign up. They could talk. If they want to sign up, they can have like a 1-off or 2-off to see how it is. How does that? How
Yeah, I
does
mean,
that?
so we have a monthly, a 6-month, and a 12-month membership. So
Mhm.
folks can sign up for the monthly membership, which again, right now is something like $25 a month, and check out one of our pathways. Give me some feedback.
That's great. Well, this is awesome. So this is, you know what? We need more of this. It shouldn't just be, a certain month and say, okay, this is mental health awareness month. I think the way we are now, it has to be every month. Every day has to be it. And I don't mean to touch on a third rail, but I think when we hear even about all these mass shootings, the undercurrent to me, my own, observation, I think a lot of it's mental health oriented. Yes, it's guns, but when you see these people do it, you could see there's something they need help, at least in my opinion.
I
So
mean,
I think we need more.
I would argue all
Yeah.
forms of harm, all
Mhm.
forms of violence
Oh,
stem
sure.
from some bit of mental illness, a feeling of
Absolutely.
being unheard, of being left out, of anger, hatred, like, even violence in the form of yelling and screaming. They come from some,
Right.
deeper rooted
Or even,
mental health concern.
or even during the pandemic, how many times did you see somebody just fighting in a supermarket, just completely losing control? So I think what you're doing is so important. I think this is something as a society we have to be able to talk about. We have to take action, and we need more of places like Real to help people out, because it's not getting better. Let's be
I
honest.
agree.
It's
We need
not. So
more
we got
people
to
like
do.
Jack that bring Real to the forefront. We're lucky to have
Well,
you.
can I tell you something seriously, Ariel?
Yeah.
That's what I like doing these podcasts about, because to me, my own my own framework is this: like, you turn on cable news and you have a bunch of people in these boxes just yelling and arguing with each other. Nothing gets done. Social media, everyone's fighting and arguing with each other. It's ridiculous. But there's so many people like yourself who are doing good things and trying to improve people's lives, trying to make things better. And you don't get those voices out there. So I figured, hey, if I can do that, I could do my small part. And you know how that is, Ariel. If everyone does a little part, then it starts making a big difference. So I love when I'm able to speak to people like yourself who are trying to move the needle and make it better and improve people's lives. That's just fantastic. I think that's just so great. If somebody who watches this signs up and their life is better and they have a better relationship with their family and their children, wow, that's great. You know what I mean? Like, we did something positive. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all the good work you're doing.
I appreciate you saying that, and I'm excited for a future that is more real.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Ariel.
Amazing. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.